Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. And we're so excited to have you join us all for a very special Digital Inclusion 101 webinar for Digital Inclusion Week. Some housekeeping before we start. This presentation is being recorded, and the recording, slides, and additional resources will be shared after the webinar. Any questions that you may have, we will have a Q&A for all the presenters and panelists towards the end. So if you do have a question, please make sure to put it in the Q&A chat for our team to have an organized place to view them. All right. So firstly, it is Digital Inclusion Week. This week, over 360 events are happening nationwide that is dedicated to raising awareness about digital equity and showcasing our collective efforts and impactful digital inclusion work. Our theme this year is community-driven digital futures, and it recognizes that the most impactful solutions spring directly from within our own communities. So please check out our website to learn more. Make sure that your Digital Inclusion Week event is registered if you are participating this week. And if this is the first time you're hearing about it, it's not too late to participate. Share a post about digital inclusion work in your area, what you guys have been doing in your organization and bringing digital equity to your community. And make sure to tag us at Net Inclusion and use the hashtag DIW2025. And also share how you're participating in Digital Inclusion Week in the chat. We also want to thank our wonderful Digital Inclusion Week sponsors for supporting this week and also supporting digital equity work. So thank you to Verizon and Comcast. Alrighty. So here is our agenda for the next hour. We're going to first introduce who NDIA is, what we do for those who might be new to this work and just got this information from their boss to register. So don't worry, we'll fill you in on that. Then after that, we're going to jump right into definitions that you should know. Then we're going to have our wonderful senior policy manager, Shauna, present about policy as it relates to digital inclusion. And then we're going to have a wonderful panel discussion. And then make sure you're brewing up your questions, put them in the Q&A so you can ask our panelists and presenters any questions that you may have. All right. So for the first part of this, I will be doing an intro presentation. So hi, everybody. I'm Pamela, she, they. I'm the training and community manager with NDIA. So I do these bi-monthly Digital Inclusion 101 webinars. You also might have seen me in our monthly community calls. And I help welcome new folks to digital inclusion work. And the next presenter with me is Shauna. So go ahead, Shauna, to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Like Pamela said, I'm Shauna Edson, Senior Policy Manager here at NDIA. Happy Digital Inclusion Week. I look forward to Digital Inclusion Week every week, and I am joining you from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Awesome. And I'm over here in a nice, chilly 59-degree Madison, Wisconsin. All right, you'll be hearing from Shauna in just a few minutes, talk about policy work. But all right, so an intro to NDIA. NDIA stands for National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and we advance digital equity by supporting community programs and equipping policymakers to act. We are a community strong of over 2,000 affiliates with over 47 tribal entities in all 50 states, including American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands in supporting programs that help with affordable broadband, access to devices, and digital skills training and support. We are a knowledge sharing forum. We have working groups. We also have a very robust and popular listserv. We have a newsletter. We have monthly community calls and monthly affiliate plus calls as well. And so what we do is we take everything that we are learning from our community members, from digital inclusion practitioners working on the ground, and then we align our advocacy efforts and free resources with that. So we have quite a lot of resources on our webpage, and we'll talk more about that towards the end, but definitely check out our website for our digital inclusion resource library. All right, let's jump into some key terms. First is the digital divide. So this is what we call the issue. It's the gap between those who have affordable access, skills, and support to effectively engage online and those who do not. And this divide has existed since the beginning of the internet, but the pandemic really exposed the reality and created awareness that many communities don't have the same access, skills, and support to engage online. It also exposed the reality of cost. We saw a lot of our community members having to cut their internet service because it was too expensive. We saw it in education, where students were falling behind in class because they couldn't connect to their virtual classrooms or learn how to navigate their device. We also see it in the job market. Not everybody being able to participate in the competitive job market because they either don't own a device or have essential digital skills to apply. And then also the lack of infrastructure. Communities not having access to the internet because the infrastructure either isn't there or it is very outdated. And why does this gap exist? It is underinvestment in broadband in low-income communities. So there's an investigation by the Markup, and they found that residents of historically redlined areas receive significantly slower internet speeds. And also this kind of brings us to the term digital redlining, which is discrimination by internet service providers in deployment, maintenance, upgrade, or delivery of services. All right. The next term is digital equity, and this is what we call the goal. So, when NDIA was created in 2015, one of our first priorities was to collaborate with our community in the hope of developing accurate language for on-the-ground work. You know, how do we accurately describe in a few words this work where you are helping people connect to the internet or helping them learn about their device or, learning about internet security and safety? And the result of that was the creation of terms like digital equity and digital inclusion. And our primary source in developing vocabulary around our movement has always been our community and will continue to do so. All right. And so digital equity, why are we using the term digital equity? Um, Digital equity, it actually, let me go back one more slide. Okay, there we go. So digital equity, it's the condition where everyone in our community can get online and use the internet in the way that they want to. And so digital equity enables all of our community members to engage and participate and be active members in our society. It allows people to stay up to date about current events. It helps people and communities advocate for issues that are important to them and their community members. It also helps for people experiencing homelessness to find community resources and staying connected with loved ones or enrolling in government programs. We also see it with healthcare, people being able to utilize telehealth services and not have to take off a day of work and lose potential income because now they can connect to their healthcare provider remotely. People being able to get diagnoses remotely and schedule and pay medical bills online. And on top of that, it also allows for enrichment in life, right? Which is also as important. So it allows folks to learn new skills, whether it's learning a new recipe or learning to play a new instrument or learning a new language so you can connect with more people. And also, in the spirit of connection, it helps people find their special community, right? It allows for you to find online communities that are based on your shared interests or identities or views. And it also allows you to stay connected to your friends and family that live far away. All right. So why digital equity and why not? Why are we using the term equity and not equality? And quite frankly, it's because equality does not serve our communities. With equality, everybody gets the same resources, opportunities, and solutions. And equity, it recognizes that different circumstances and barriers exist within our communities. And so we have to distribute resources effectively to reach an equal outcome. So in this image, both of these pictures have 6 books, but on the left side with equality, everybody gets 3 books no matter what. So they're not really changing anything. The tallest person is still the tallest. But on the right side with equity, there's still 6 amount of books, right? But it's distributed in a way where it matches the needs of the people. Tallest person doesn't necessarily need the book, and it's distributed more towards those who want or need to start at that same kind of space. So that is what equity is. It is understanding the specific challenges that exist in our community. It also encourages us to meet people where they are because it allows us to understand that there are unique barriers and not everybody in our community are experiencing different, are not everybody in our community have the same exact problems. There are going to be some people whose main issue is cost, some folks whose main issue is equity in classes, not having classes that are supported in their language or in their time, or not having the devices. And sometimes it's all 3 of those things. So some of those community barriers can be systemic, like digital redlining, or it could also be economic, like that high cost of internet or not being able to afford devices. And then the other kind of skilled barriers is those limited digital skills to use the internet safely. All right. And then digital inclusion, this is the work, it's those activities necessary to achieve digital equity. And this picture really does sum it up. So there's all these different elements of digital inclusion work. So that's affordable high-speed internet, affordable and appropriate devices, access to digital skills training, quality technical support, and then also online content designed to enable self-sufficiency. All right, so that's kind of my high-level overview. We'll dive into barriers and learning about coalitions and things like that with our panel, but I want to pass it over to Shauna to talk more about policy.
All right, thank you. So building on all that information you just learned, I'm going to talk about some federal policy that's related to digital equity and digital inclusion and helpful for you to know about. So next slide. I'm going to start with status updates around the Digital Equity Act, or the DEA. Next slide. So the DEA programs were part of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act of 2021. That's also known as the IIJA. The programs were managed by the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, which is the NTIA. The DEA had 3 grant programs. The first one was the State Planning Grant Program. This program is complete, and all states, territories, and the District of Columbia have digital equity plans. So yay for digital equity plans for everybody. The next program was the Capacity Grant Program. It provided grant funds to states, territories, and the District of Columbia, as well as tribal entities, to implement their digital equity plans. So all states had submitted their applications, and we're ready to go on starting their implementation of the plans. And then lastly, we have the competitive grant program, which provided grant funds over 5 fiscal years to local governments, nonprofits, community anchor institutions, educational and workforce development organizations, as well as tribal entities. And when we say tribal entities, this means Indian tribes, Alaskan Native entities, as well as Native Hawaiian organizations. Okay, next slide. So the current status of the Digital Equity Act. On May 8th, the president canceled DEA via a social media post. On May 9th, the administration terminated the DEA grants. They sent letters to all competitive grantees with contracts and all states and territories. The battle for the Digital Equity Act has now moved to courts in Congress. So there's one exception for this cancellation. Native entities that applied for the Native Entities Set Aside, which is a special set of funds just for Native entities for the capacity and competitive grant programs, are still under review. So we're hopeful that funding will come through for those. All right, next slide. So with this cancellation, what is NDIA doing? First of all, we're pursuing all options. That means that today, represented by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law, we announced a lawsuit filed in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, challenging the Trump administration's repeal of the Digital Equity Act competitive grant program. The suit argues that the administration's unilateral decision to end the statutory program and terminate grant funding is unconstitutional and violates the separation of powers between the executive and legislative branches as outlined in the Constitution. NDIA is asking the court to compel the Trump administration to restore the Digital Equity Act competitive grant program. So that's all I have to say today about the lawsuit. But if you want to know more information, read our blog post as well as the complaint itself, which Amanda, thank you, has put in the chat for you. We also sent a sign-on letter on June 18th to the U.S. Department of Commerce's Secretary Lutnick and acting NTIA Administrator Adam Cassidy, requesting a full reinstatement of the Digital Equity Act grants. The letter was signed by 156 individuals from 140 organizations representing 39 states. So the letter urged the reinstatement of the programs that were canceled, but also importantly described the work the organizations would have done under the program. And that takes me to the next slide. So what can you do to save the DEA capacity and competitive grant programs? We need more people to understand what these programs would actually do, like help people talk to their doctors, take online classes, get jobs, avoid scams, all of the things that NDIA affiliates do on a daily basis. This requires all of us to take action. Explain to policymakers what impact your programs have in your communities, talk to the media, write op-eds, ask your community members to do the same. Telling the stories about the work you do and its impact on individuals has never been more important. Also, share your stories with NDIA, and we will work to elevate them. So to help with this, we created a suite of resources and tools that you can use for advocacy and raising awareness of the DEA. This includes information on how to find your elected officials, email, phone call templates, best practices, and talking points for congressional meetings, and more. So again, there's a link to that resource in the chat. These are all free resources. They're templates. You can take them and adapt them to meet your needs, make a copy, and change it to help you tell your story. Okay, next I'm going to shift to affordable broadband policies. So first up here, we have the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, which is also called BEAD. BEAD was also included in the IIJA, and Congress specified 5 ways that states and territories could use BEAD funds. States, to use the funds, states could subgrant them through a competitive grant process to organizations to build broadband to underserved and unserved locations, connect community anchor institutions, data collection, broadband mapping, and planning, installing internet and Wi-Fi infrastructure, or providing reduced cost broadband in a multifamily residential building. And lastly, broadband adoption, which includes programs to provide affordable devices. So Congress designated BEAD so states could close the internet access gap in their state, and then with any remaining funds, they could best address barriers to broadband access, adoption, and the use of these funds to make BEAD successful. So the non-deployment funds are these 3 categories listed above. The BEAD program was designed to be worked in combination with the Digital Equity Act, so that all barriers to broadband access, adoption, and use could be addressed. On June 6th of this year, NTIA published new guidance on BEAD. In the notice, they rescinded its prior approval, so things that had already been approved, for all non-deployment activities in the state's initial proposals. It said then that it would provide further guidance later. So we haven't heard further guidance yet. Nearly all the states have submitted their applications, And most of the analysis of the applications have shown that states will have remaining funds for non-deployment projects, which again are the things listed here. So because of the lack of guidance from NTIA to date, and because of the agency's rescission of its prior approval for all non-deployment activities, and its demonstrated disregard for Congress' explicit intent and instruction to implement the Digital Equity Act, we believe the non-deployment funds could be at risk of reallocation or rescission. So again, we're asking you to advocate and use your voices to reach out to Congress and let them now know how important these non-deployment funds are for states. So to help with that, Amanda again posted in the chat a link to a blog post. We've included templates to help you reach out to members of Congress about the BEAD programs, a sign-on letter to BEAD program administrators, as well as members of Congress. So check out those templates. And so this Digital Inclusion Week, we have lots of advocacy work that you can do. Okay, next slide. Next I want to talk about Lifeline. So Lifeline is a federal broadband benefit program. A federal broadband benefit program is the most efficient and effective way to address affordability. A federal benefit provides uniformity, stability, and efficiencies that you just can't really do through distinct individually federal funded programs. So the FCC program, Lifeline, helps low-income consumers afford communication services. The program offers discounts on qualifying monthly phone service, broadband, and bundled voice broadband packages from participating providers. And people that qualify can receive a monthly discount of $9.25. And those residing on tribal lands may receive a discount of up to $34.24. So there are links to the Lifeline website if you would like more information on that program, as well as to help people sign up. Affordable broadband advocates are working to improve and expand the Lifeline program to meet current needs. $9.25 doesn't go a long way to helping people get affordable broadband, but it is a start and it's what we have right now. So again, we're advocating to improve it and expand it or create a new federal affordable broadband benefit program. All right, next up, we have broadband labels. So starting in October of 2024, all ISPs must display broadband labels. They're like nutrition labels are for food, but include information about internet plans. So I would encourage you to check and see if you can find a broadband label for the plan that you're signed up for and make sure all the information matches. It's also a really great tool for helping educate folks on what their internet service plan includes. However, on August 24th, there was an executive order that directed the FCC to adopt broadband nutrition labels. This policy no longer has the White House's formal policy backing, which could reduce FCC pressure to advance it. The FCC will vote on a notice that will re-examine broadband labels during their October 28th, 2025 meeting. So we're not sure what the future for broadband labels will look like, so stay tuned for what happens next. Okay, and lastly, in the policy world, we have digital discrimination that I'm going to talk about today. The rules officially went into effect in March of 2024, and the rules cover any aspect of broadband internet access service that impedes, impairs, or denies equal access to that service. So this could look like discrimination in pricing, challenges with customer service, as well as network and infrastructure upgrades. The rules protect consumers even if there was no intent to discriminate. This means that if someone was impacted by discrimination, the provider will be responsible, even if the discrimination was not intentional. The new SEC chairman, Brandon Carr, eliminated the Digital Discrimination Task Force on January 21st of this year as part of ending the agency's promotion of all digital equity and inclusion programs. So the future of this program is uncertain. The difference is now we are not seeing enforcement, but the rules are not repealed, meaning that it's still law. So individuals and communities can and should file digital discrimination complaints with the FCC. You can also provide details about your concerns regarding the elimination of the Digital Discrimination Task Force, which Amanda has provided a link for in the chat. So we have lots of things pending and unknown at this time, but stay on that NDIA listserv and watch for our blog posts because we do keep things pretty current.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shauna. If you all have any policy questions, please put that in the Q&A chat during the Q&A section, and our wonderful Shauna will be the one and the best person to answer that. Alrighty. Moving on to the panel segment, I am so excited to have our two panelists today join us. We first have Leslie Scott, the Digital Inclusion Program Manager with KC Digital Drive, and our wonderful Nate Stone, part of the NDIA team, the Senior Program Manager, specifically working the Digital Navigator part of our work. So let me stop sharing my screen, and then we can get you spotlighted. Alrighty. Perfect, perfect. Welcome, Nate and Leslie, to the Digital Inclusion 101 webinar. So excited to have you here. This is our first time kind of doing this type of panel portion. And to introduce yourselves, I want to ask you both, how did you both get started in your digital inclusion journey? And I'll start with Leslie.
Yeah, so I started with Connecting for Good. I just happened to have a conversation with Michael Limita, who started this little bitty organization here in Kansas City, primarily, I think, sparked by the arrival of Google Fiber. So some people may or may not know, we were the first Google Fiber city in the entire nation. So little old KCK, Kansas City, Kansas. Everybody who's heard me speak before, raise your hand if you knew there were two Kansas cities. So when you're watching a Chiefs game, that is probably Kansas City, Missouri. I live in Kansas City, Kansas. It's the smaller community in our region. KC Digital Drive operates on both sides of the state line as a regional organization. And I was the volunteer coordinator there. And then in typical small world Kansas City fashion, here at Kansas City, at KC Digital Drive, we have the first digital skills instructor I had as a volunteer is our digital skills instructor who we absorbed from PCs for People, which had combined with Connecting for Good a few years ago. So she's still here. She's 88 and still doing an amazing job meeting our community where they are. And so I'm so proud to say she was my very first volunteer. And then from there, I was in the first cohort of N10's Digital Inclusion Fellowship and just kind of continued my journey. I joined KC Digital Drive 5 years ago when we were fortunate enough to receive a grant as part of CARES Act money that Johnson County, Kansas, which ironically is the richest county in Kansas, did for to help people with to pay for their internet service. And then we had some complimentary money that was in a COVID relief fund for the rest of our 9-county region. So been doing this work for a while now, and we've really just expanded it. And I'll get into that later.
Wonderful, wonderful, Leslie. Thank you. It all kind of started with a connection, conversation. Love that. Nate, how about you? How did you start your digital inclusion journey?
Um, I trace it back to so I'm in Denver, Colorado, and I trace my journey back to I had way back in the day. I got a job with a local nonprofit that was doing education-based organizing with immigrant families, and my first day in the office. This was long enough ago that they had a fax machine, and the ED um, the ED said, "We haven't been able to get this fax machine to work. Could you take a look at it and see what's going on?" And I was the first person who had walked in the door and noticed that it wasn't plugged into the wall. And that was what led me to be. Um, I ended up becoming like the default tech person for that nonprofit. So like I built a website by hand and we did all kinds of things. But it led me to thinking a lot more about what the needs of the community we were working with were, which led me a bunch of different places. I did after school programming, doing like media creation with young folks, and eventually to the Denver Public Library where I was for 13 years, um, teaching folks how to everything from like how to use a mouse to coding in Python, and starting our digital navigator program, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. But it all started with an unplugged fax machine, is where it started.
Love it, love it. Unplugged fax machine. Awesome. So yeah, let's get started. I love doing or starting off digital inclusion 101s with talking about barriers. So first, I want to ask both of you, what's the most common barrier that you see people kind of like a barrier preventing them in your community from getting online? Leslie, we could start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest barrier, it's hard to pick one, because as we talk about the digital inclusion stool, if any one of the legs is not there, it's going to fall over. It is difficult to pick just one, but I think devices is a big one. It's difficult to come out of pocket to get a large screen device. People are making do a lot of times on their phones, and as we know, that's just not sufficient for so many tasks. And so I think devices are one of the big ones. We were fortunate enough to get a grant from the Kansas Office of Broadband Development. We're going to be able to distribute 575 devices on the Kansas side of the state line here in our region through some of our distribution partners, which are nonprofit organizations, housing organization, and be able to work through them to get those devices in the hands of people who need them most. And so I would just say, if you can do that, there are maybe some ways to leverage your cell phone plan if you have a hotspot ability, that sort of thing, but it's really hard to do it the other way around. So that would be what I would say is one of the biggest barriers. And then of course, the other two are really complementary. So, devices, skills, and internet, they all go together.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like there's this, it's devices, but also underneath that iceberg is cost and learning, what's in your plan and could you get a device that way or things like that. So awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and I think just one more thought, we think about the digital inclusion stool, the three legs, but we really have a way, I call it just in my mind, looking at the digital inclusion stool through a prism and thinking about how you may have a device, but if it's older, like, can you take full advantage of the speed you have for your internet service? Are you able to actually get Windows 11? There's all sorts of layers to that onion in the device, just in the device space itself.
Right, right. Like, does it match your needs? Does it match, what you need to do with it for work or school and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, and you may think you need to continue to pay more for your internet service because you're not getting the speed you need and you're having trouble on Zoom calls or whatever, but it could have something to do with your device. So, that support aspect and just understanding a little bit better, what is sufficient for your needs from a device perspective can be hard for most of us because we're really not most of us aren't as tech savvy as Nate and know to plug in that fax machine.
I just plugged something in. It wasn't that big. Just to add on to Leslie's, I think people often think about um, like affordability is a huge problem, right? So getting access to broadband and devices is always hard. I think what COVID taught us is that those skills are also key to actually using what we put out in the community, right? Here in Denver, the school district did an amazing job getting hotspots out to the community during COVID, and they got hotspots into every house that needed internet. Um, but when they pulled stats, it turned out 40% of those were never turned on, and that was because folks didn't have the support they needed to actually know how to use it and how to connect to it, right? So that human infrastructure of providing supports to folks to actually use and adopt what's being put out there is super important.
Thank you, Nate, for that human aspect. And we will be talking about digital navigators, but yes, that human element cannot be replaced. We just see things that, might not be visible to a program or something, or a code or something like that. But yes, wonderful. It seems like what you're both speaking on is there, even just device in itself or skills in itself, it's still like this domino effect. There's still other barriers too. So um, Leslie, you had created a digital divide simulation. Could you tell us more about that? How did that get started?
Our regional planning commission hosted a series of meetings about where we were in our region as far as infrastructure primarily. And I happened to be sitting next to the executive director of the Educational Foundation for the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools District. And she looked at me, you know how you have that moment where you're like, and then you look at someone and like, you know, and she said, those poverty simulations, we should have one of those for the digital divide. And I thought that makes a whole lot of sense. And so, as some people may know, I'm an expert user of our NDIA listserv. And I put it out on the listserv and said, hey, anybody doing this or have any interest in working together to put something like this, in operations. And so I got some takers. I was able to get a great foundation from someone who had done it as a Vista, sent me all the documentation that she had, and just built it from there. Spent some time really thinking about the kinds of tasks that are very common that we, maybe don't even think about as people who are well resourced. And so we did our first one here in Kansas City, and it really is designed to have two different types of participants. One is the persona participants, and those people are the ones who are walking around in the shoes of people who maybe are likely to be on the wrong side of the digital divide. We do have a few people, just to contrast the experience. We do have a few people who have everything they need, the device, the internet, the skills to use them. We want to just highlight how much easier life is when you have all those things. And so we have free time cards that those people can get. So you go through 4 15-minute weeks, and you have a set of tasks that you have to complete. If you get those done, you get to raise your hand and you get to pick out a free time card that's like, I get to go to the park with my kids or watch a movie or, Zoom with family, whatever it might be that you're interested in doing. And then everyone else is still out there struggling to get things done. And in that way, I think a lot of times we saw a lot of the pictures during the pandemic, kids sitting outside libraries or Taco Bell or wherever. But like until you actually have to try and figure out how to enroll your kid in school, without any transportation, any internet at home, and you have to wait on the bus and go through, all the many lived experiences of people on the wrong side of the digital divide. It just doesn't really click. So the persona participants are doing that, and then we have agency participants who are acting in those roles of where people would go to try and do those tasks. And so they are also learning, how difficult it is, how frustrated people are because they've been somewhere else and they told them to go there and they can't help them. And then they refer them to the library and they just, constantly. And then there's this huge line at the library at every single simulation just to highlight like how important libraries are in this whole equation. So it's really an awareness tool and a foundational experience that we hope people will use as a springboard for advocacy and other kinds of resource allocation, we hope. You're welcome to talk with me offline to get more information. We've done I'd have to count, but we just got back a few weeks ago. We went to San Antonio one week and we went to Baltimore County the next week. So 2 very different communities, but still very much same kinds of issues are pretty universal, unfortunately. And so we try to align the experiences up with anything unique with the community. If there was a big layoff or something like that, if it's urban versus rural. So just trying to reflect, again, that lived experience of folks who and get those decision makers in the room, hopefully to be able to move the needle in their community.
Wonderful. And we'll share links to the digital divide simulation in the post-webinar email for those who are interested, and you can poke Leslie's brain for that. So
Yeah,
kind of
there's some videos, quick videos that you can watch, and that will help crystallize it in your brain more.
For sure. Wonderful. So kind of moving along towards other elements of digital inclusion work is digital skills training. So I want to ask Nate, for those who are starting off, because a lot of folks who are attending these DI 101s, they might be tasked to do a digital skills class or develop one. Where should someone kind of begin in that journey?
Um, if I give a very short answer, it would be please don't reinvent the wheel. So there are so many fantastic free resources out there on the internet. I think in the chat, thank you, Amanda. Two places that collect a bunch of them. Number one, we worked with David Keys from the city, formerly the city of Seattle, and he collected this fantastic resource list of free training that you can use with your community and you can use to upskill yourself. Um, the second link that Amanda put in there is a blog post uh, that was written a little bit ago, but all the information is still valid on it of different curricula that practitioners like yourself have used around the country and used to build their own curriculum. Um, but sorry, I guess I could have made that shorter by saying Google it first and then write it. Like there's always going to be twists you have to make to make it relevant to your community, right? But there are so many resources that are a great place to jump off of.
Wonderful, wonderful. A great other resource I want to plug is the listserv.
Yeah.
A lot of people just plug, a question of like, I'm new to this. I have to develop this. This is the community we serve. Anybody have any resources with that? And if your question is digital navigator related, Nate will most likely respond within 10 minutes. Um, Perfect. And speaking of digital navigators, let's talk more about that. Nate, can you share when and how the digital navigator model was created?
Right. So if you haven't already blacked it out from your memory, there was a global pandemic a little while ago. Um, and during that pandemic, right, we saw a bunch of folks who'd been doing this work for years and years. Community organizations like Leslie's, libraries like where I was, um, were saw the immediate demand, right? Those kids sitting in parking lots in front of Taco Bell trying to get on the internet to go to school. What became immediately obvious was that all of us were doing a bunch of disparate parts. We were helping people get devices, we were helping people get online, we were teaching skills. What we needed was a connector that helps, like a single resource place for people to get connected to all those different resources. And that's the root of the digital navigator model. It's based on navigator models that came out of like public health, right? Which you saw, and it's based on work that has been going on for decades. Um, the if you would like, so a bunch of folks came together to give it a name. Digital Navigator is what ended up happening out of that COVID working group. So NDIA, our organization, helped pull a bunch of folks together. The community developed some standards and a whole bunch of other free resources you can use if you're interested in launching a similar program in your community. Those are all on the Navigator page that Amanda just posted in the chat. We just released a program toolkit, which has everything from what a navigator is to how to plan for your program to how to maintain it over the long run, including like job descriptions and things like that. And that's all in that as well.
Perfect. Yeah, and on that page you'll get a job descriptions, you'll get intake surveys, all these tools to help you develop or kind of help refine your digital navigator program. Leslie, how does KC Digital Drive incorporate digital navigators into your digital inclusion programming?
We have our digital skills trainer who is the most patient digital navigator I think I've ever experienced. She's amazing and is just a figure who's very prominent in this neighborhood where people go for any number of things. She helps people with their phones, with their computers, you name it. With other things, it is a wide variety of tasks that she assists people and supports them along the way. We also launched a digital ambassador program about a year ago, and that was leveraging some workforce dollars that we were fortunate enough to get through a grant from Bank of America, and worked with current or recently graduated college students to get them into one of our partner organizations who hosted them. And they did anything from helping job seekers to supporting older adults, parents. We have an organization that primarily serves Latino parents and helps them engage in their children's educational experience. And we're launching that again, and have a different pot of money that we're tapping into for that on the Kansas side through the Board of Regents. So, what we're really good at is looking at what resources we have and trying to leverage those and fill a need that we see in our partner organizations, because we're doing. I call Carol our digital skills instructor, and the classes she teaches kind of our test kitchen. So it's a really great microcosm of our community and what their needs are. And so it really helps inform our work as we engage with our organizational partners. So, taking what the available funding is out there, and just spoiler alert, that's what I'll be talking about at AnchorNet here toward the end of the month. And so if you're going to be there, we'd love to have you pop into our workshop. But that's really how we're integrating digital ambassadors doing the digital navigation work. And we also have a Lead for America, American Connection Corps member who just started serving a few weeks ago. And we were able to help a few of our partners get one of the ACC members as well. So they serve a year, work full time, whereas the digital ambassadors, it's usually a short stint, a few hours a week, but it's a powerful experience. And in our first cohort, we had two who were hired, one who was hired full time, and then two who are serving as ACC members. So it's like 50% of our cohort went on to continue the work. So clearly, it's rewarding and something that they feel like they can make a difference.
Wonderful, wonderful. And a really great way to start, in your digital inclusion journey. Wanting to kind of take a note on time, we do have 9 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, you are welcome to put them in the chat or in the Q&A chat. Right now, I do still have a few questions to ask our panelists. So if I don't see any questions pop up, we'll just keep the conversation going. I'll give people some time to type. All right, so keeping it moving, Nate, just one last question on the topic of digital navigators. How have other organizations used digital navigators? We heard how Casey Digital Drive does it. How do you see other organizations utilize digital navigators?
Yeah, I love following Leslie with this question because like Leslie's organization already used a bunch of different models. one of the great things about this particular model that you have a person who serves as a resource for all these different inclusion needs, is that it's super flexible and can be adapted to all kinds of different circumstances, and you can staff it in a whole bunch of different ways, right? So you saw Leslie's got people who are paid, she's got people who are AmeriCorps volunteers. We've seen, like in the Hudson Valley in New York, there's all volunteers who are in libraries and community organizations. They get centralized training and they get distributed out across a gigantic rural area. We've seen digital navigators in healthcare settings, right? So helping people in like behavioral health settings access the apps they need to get their medications and do telehealth appointments. We've seen them in South Carolina. There's this amazing program doing them in school libraries where they're working with parents and their kids together. We've seen digital navigator programs inside of prisons where prisoners themselves are doing digital navigation work with their peers and helping them learn new skills. So it's all over the place, which is super cool to see. If you want some sort of even more detailed examples, NDIA ran a program called the National Digital Navigator Corps, and we collected all the stories of those different organizations together, and that sort of gives you primarily focusing on tribal and rural communities, but that gives you a picture of like how some of these digital navigator programs have implemented this idea in a really concrete way.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nate. And those stories are in the chat. All right. We've got just one more question left, and I'll pass it to Leslie. One thing that new folks are kind of tasked to do is outreach. So that can be overwhelming, kind of a scary thing, especially if you're starting new and not have any connections. So Leslie, could you share an example of a, successful partnership that you've created with another organization?
Yeah, I mean, our whole way that we do things is basically through our digital life exchange model. So we have 40 some organizations we're working with, because, again, we are more of a B2B kind of organization. So a lot less interfacing with people who are needing the help. And so it's really about tapping into those organizations that have the on the ground presence, the trusted relationships, especially when you're thinking about trying to reach communities that maybe not as comfortable being out and visible these days. So, we just had a coalition, a digital inclusion coalition meeting last week. And one of the presenters was talking about the reluctance of folks to provide their address and their phone number now, just because that's just concerning to them. And so, being able to have those perspectives is so important, and it may not be your own lived experience. So, just recognizing that you really need to be tapping into those organizations that are serving diverse populations. Do you have anyone who's serving people in the rural areas, so you can understand that experience? Do you have, again, providing language support, and just recognizing that even one thing that we learned from our immigrant serving organizations is that many of the people they serve are pre-literate. So even if you translate something into English, or from English into their native language, they may still not be at a point where they can read that. So, just really building out your network and forming those relationships with those trusted organizations is key, because you have your own world and your own network, but as you start to think about how you can add all the little networks together to be sure that you have those folks who have the trust of whomever you're trying to reach, is really critical.
Wonderful, Leslie. Thank you. And that really does kind of put a plug into looking at the digital inclusion coalitions that are near you. NDIA, we have a digital inclusion coalition map, which we will share after this call as a link, so you can see what coalitions are near you, if there are any. Also, we do have an affiliates page with a map that has all of our affiliates on there too. So check out who's near you, and reach out to them. Ask them about, the digital divide, how that shows up with their communities. And I think that's like a great way to start that conversation. Absolutely.
I mean, just one last thing, which is, the community is geography does not limit your community. And again, I cannot overemphasize the value of the NDIA listserv. If you're wondering something, everyone remembers when they first started, and so there's no dumb questions. And I think that just feeling comfortable posting something on the listserv, and you may take the call one-on-one with someone instead of the listserv from there, but that's a great place to get started.
Perfect. Thank you. Nate, welcome back. With 1 minute left, I want you to give you a moment to plug your Digital Navigator working group for those who might be interested and might benefit from that.
Yeah, so if you are have an established digital navigator program or are interested in starting one, we have a monthly digital navigator working group that meets the third Thursday of every month at 12 p.m. Mountain. I'm the worst at time zones, so I will let you convert that to your own time zone. But it lasts an hour long. We have about 500 different members. Not all of them are there at the same time, but we share resources. We have existing programs come through and talk through what they're doing. It's a gas. So you join by emailing us to get on well, first you have to be an affiliate, and then you can email me, and I'll add you to the mailing list. So I will put my email in the chat. And if you're interested in joining that working group, please just send an email my way.
Thank you so much. The last plug I want to do before we all end is to join us for our annual conference. Our annual conference called Net Inclusion. It's our nation's premier digital inclusion conference, and it will be in Chicago, Illinois from February 3 to 5. So bring your puffer jackets. It's a great place to learn and be amongst peers that talk about federal policies impacting digital equity, digital inclusion programming, digital inclusion best practices. So please check out our website to learn more. All right, y'all. Well, it is 2 o'clock Central Time, my time. So that means this is officially done. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists and our wonderful policy speaker, Shauna. Thank you, everybody, to who came and joined us. Happy Digital Inclusion Week. Please share your Digital Inclusion Week festivities. Tag us on social media at Net Inclusion. Use hashtag DAW2025. And all right. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Thank you all. Bye.